Does the U.S. government plan to start deporting newborns? That's a serious question that Judge Deborah Boardman asked of the United States government in court today. It was a hearing, an emergency hearing, that was requested by plaintiffs in one of 4 cases that were filed challenging Donald Trump's February 20th executive order, essentially attempting to do the unconstitutional act of changing the United States Constitution by executive order, something that is not allowed at all. And during this hearing that was triggered because the United States Supreme Court last Friday, June 27th, decided that they wanted to stop district court judges from issuing nationwide injunctions on 4 different occasions. 4 different district court judges responding to parties in cases challenging Donald Trump's executive order, said, not only am I going to let you know that what Donald Trump is trying to do is unlawful, unconstitutional, as to you as the parties, it's unconstitutional for the entire nation. So I'm issuing a nationwide preliminary injunction stopping the effect of this executive order, just telling the Trump administration, as an Article 3 judge, that's what our job is, to look up and down from the head, from the president, down to the local courts, to the local level, Congress, whenever they pass something, whatever executive agency, whenever someone does something that's unlawful, our job as district court judge is to tell them that it's unlawful and it can't be done, especially if it's coming from the executive or Congress, to anyone in the United States. That's what we do. The Supreme Court said, no, you only we, the Supreme Court, can do nationwide injunctions. Now, it was a big disappointment. It wasn't necessarily specifically related to the substance. And this is why the Trump administration did not appeal the district court judge's decision that it's not lawful for them to try to change the Constitution. They did not appeal that. Essentially, they concede that. What they're trying to do is trying to do what they cannot do legally by just trying to issue this executive order and just hope that you don't have the resources to challenge them. And they want only the people who have the resources to challenge them to be able to get birth certificates for their children. Now, I hope I didn't lose you here, but that's what they essentially want. They did not challenge the underlying case at all. Since that case, and in that case, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who wrote the opinion for that case, and Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who wrote his own concurring opinion, which means he goes along, he's part of the 6-3, the conservative justices voted for this, and Sonia Sotomayor, who wrote the dissenting opinion, along with the other 3 judges who would not do this, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Elena Kagan. In their dissenting opinion, all 3 of them said that an option, instead of this nationwide injunction for courts, is to issue instead a class certification. A class certification means if I have a dispute and I have a problem and I go to court, the court can say, it's not just you, there's other people similarly situated who may also have this problem. So in order to avoid them having to come, you can certify a class, says this class, I represent myself and everyone else similarly situated. You certify the class. At some point, the class opens up and they tell people, if you're part of this class, you can pitch in and say something to let you know that you're part of the class. And sometimes you don't even have to say anything. It's just once you want that thing to happen, it's automatically. So the parameters of a class are different and vary. So that is what those 3 justices said is the option and alternative to the nationwide injunction. So here's the status of the various different class certifications that have been filed since the June 27th Supreme Court decision. CASA issued a request, the one that's what I'm talking about today, for a class representing all babies born after the 2025, this whole class. The Eastern states said that they want to consider doing a class for all of the states, every single state, which would be the effect of a nationwide class. Then now for the ones that's more individual, the Western states are asking for a class just representing the Western states. And then New Hampshire, some pregnant women filed for a class for not just them, but all other pregnant women. And then there was another class request and just for the state, just for pregnant women in the state of Washington. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 class certifications so far after the Supreme Court decision. The issues just today were three. One, the first issue is the fact that there was a Massachusetts case, and so the Judge Boardman asked, should we keep this considering there's another case? The plaintiffs representing the pregnant women who are undocumented, who babies would be born here, said they wanted to keep the case because Massachusetts is a state. There's issues regarding um, whether they had standing, and they're different enough that they wouldn't. It's best to keep it. And the United States government didn't really have any say or stake or claim, or they didn't really care whether or not that case continued or not. So that issue was dismissed. The second issue that was brought up was whether or not the three different sections of the executive order would be able to be implemented today. Now, the lawyers representing the Department of Justice for the United States said no. The lawyer said that he believed that the Supreme Court said the effect of their order would be 30 days from it. So the order was June 27th. So their order would be able to go into effect July 27th. So based on that, Brad Rosenberg said it was his understanding that no part of Donald Trump's executive order would be able to go into effect until July 27th. And he also said that he didn't think that there should be a class for a couple of reasons. One, he said that the people who were the original plaintiffs, they didn't challenge whether or not the judge's determination that those plaintiffs' babies would be U.S. citizen. So, and the fact that those babies are U.S. citizens, so he said, why do we need a class? They aren't the proper people to be in a class. Also, some of those babies have since been born and since gotten a U.S. citizenship. So it's kind of moot as to the women who were pregnant when this case first started. And they also said it shouldn't be a class because it's a rush. We just started. It's kind of too soon, and a bunch of reasons. To which the response from the plaintiff's attorneys were as follows. What do you mean the surprise we just started? This Department of Justice, during the oral arguments, said that they think that one solution to a ban on a nationwide injunction would be class certification. They conceded that during oral arguments. So to now come and say it's a surprise, we're not quite sure, we're just trying to figure things out, is like, that's disingenuous, and it's not reality to what you guys argued like not long ago. The oral arguments was like last month or 2 months ago, since today, July 1. They also argued that, so in the nutshell, Brad Rosenberg and the Department of Justice, United States, were saying that, well, it's not an emergency, it's not really urgent yet because an enjoyment won't stop Section 1 of the executive order, which is just a policy. That's the belief of the United States right now under Donald Trump. And, enjoyment's not going to stop their belief. You can't stop their belief. They believe they believe. So there's no need for an injunction. However, the Judge Boardman responded, Section 2 and 3 says agencies need to put his executive order into effect. It tells the Social Security Administration to not give these babies birth certificate or Social Security cards. It's telling Department of Homeland Security and Department of State to not recognize these babies as U.S. citizen. It's telling the Attorney General to enforce it, I guess, against the states that they try to give these babies birth certificate. So what do you mean that it doesn't have an effect? What? So at that point, and that's when she infamously asked, do you plan to deport babies? And he's like, I'm not planning to deport babies. And here's the thing, so then she said, you know what? I want you to put in writing. So by today, July 1, by 1 p.m., I want it in writing that you have no plans to deport babies. And you plan to wait to July 27th, or you plan to wait to see what happens in terms of not just my injunction, but others. And as I'm saying this, July 1, I'm looking at the records. It looks like another class is supposed to be certified in New Hampshire, in addition to the one in, I think, Massachusetts. I'm not sure. So we're on the ball. This case was filed the minute the Supreme Court issued that order. They were already ready. They issued, the plaintiffs were already ready and filed this emergency ruling, request for an emergency, temporary restraining order to stop the Trump administration from denying birthrights to those babies. Now, so she was not satisfied with just orally, and here's why she shouldn't be. At some point, the Department of Justice was arguing that Amy Gleason was the executive, in charge administrator of the DOJ, Department of Government Efficiency. When they argued that in the record, at the same time, Donald Trump had done an interview with Fox News side by side with Elon, essentially praising Elon for leading DOJ. Then, a day later, Donald Trump praised Elon in front of a joint session of Congress. Conflict? Also, the Trump administration said on the record that it was a mistake for them to deport a 20-year-old named Jordan Magra Salmaran because he was part of a class of children who came before 2019 unaccompanied. And according to class certification, those children were not to be deported at all. And he was deported. The Trump administration's Department of Justice on the record said it was a confluence of errors, a mistake. Around the same time, Tricia McLaughlin, the Deputy Department of Homeland Security under Kristi Noem, was on social media, on internet, on Fox News saying Jordan's not coming back. He is a criminal. Conflict. So the courts and the lawyers say one thing, and then the administration is doing something else. Similarly, under the Alien Enemies Act case, while Drew Ensign, Department of Justice attorney, was telling Judge Boasberg that he was not aware of any plane that was going to deport and ship migrants to El Salvador. He said this. While he was saying this, there were 3 planes on the way and ultimately shipped people. So they have no credibility, not at all. There was another case when Drew Ensign, I think it was him again or somebody else in Texas, was saying that I have no understanding. I do not believe that the Trump administration plans to deport any more migrants. As he was saying that, there was a bus about to ship migrants and ship them off again, the way they had done in the Alien Enemies Act case in Judge Boasberg court. But for the ACLU running to the Supreme Court, because the Fifth Circuit shoot them away, and the Supreme Court stopped the migrants that were on that bus on their way to be shipped abroad. So that's there's so many cases like that when Department of Justice are trying to do right and argue and be upstanding and say one thing, but the Trump administration, they're popping off, they're saying things on social media, they're not abiding by the law. Judge Brian Murphy in the District Court in Massachusetts in April had told the Trump administration, before you deport a migrant to a country that's not their country of original origin, you have to give them an opportunity to contest it, have their lawyer have notice, and have a full hearing as to why they should not be sent to this third party. Despite that April order, the Trump administration deported a Guatemalan man to Mexico where he was defiled because he's gay and he didn't want to go there against Judge Murphy's order. And then they also tried to send about 4 migrants to Libya, and they were stopped because the Libyan government wasn't ready. And then a third occasion, they also tried to ship about 7 or 8 migrants to South Sudan. They were stopped, and Judge Murphy was like, you have to give them a hearing. They started doing a hearing. So there's several cases, several examples when the Department of Justice say one thing and to the judges, and the Trump administration does the exact opposite, doesn't even listen to them and just do whatever the hell they want in violation of the court orders. There's a pattern of this. So that's why Judge Boardman was like, yeah, put this in writing. Just because everyone's looking at this case is really important, looking at these cases. Supreme Court just handed down their decision last June. Everyone wants to know, you're not going to just tell me this orally in a hearing, because that's what happened with Judge Boasberg. During the hearing, he said, do X, Y, and Z. Drew Ensign was like, okay, I told my clients, and the clients shipped off those people. And that's the subject of a lot of dispute since then. And that was back in March. So that's what we have. So she said until 1:00, she set a briefing schedule. What she did also do, rather than issue the emergency temporary restraining order right then and there, Instead, she told the she said, I'm going to issue a preliminary injunction. So I know you came for a temporary restraining order. I'm going to give you one better. I'm going to go further. So instead of doing that today, I'm most likely going to rule fast. We're going to be an expedited basis, meaning like we're going to have a briefing schedule super, super fast because I'm about to make my decision. But it depends on what the government says and what I see, what I'm going to do. So I got to make sure. And I think that's an example of early on in March, maybe like February when we first started this, a lot of district court judges were just handing out nationwide injunctions left and right because it was just crazy and egregious, the unconstitutional thing Trump was doing. And they were just like, we got to stop this for everybody. And now that they see the Supreme Court on more than one occasion, now that they've said they can't do nationwide injunction, but before then, they were essentially pulling them back, issuing these stays of their orders. And so they're a little bit more cautious. They want to make sure they dot their I's, cross their T's. And when they issue something, they know all eyes on them. They're methodical. And that's why I think Judge Paul Zenas in the District Court of Maryland is being careful. It's been taking so long. It's been taking so long in the Kilma Abrego Garcia case, even though the Supreme Court said that she's the one to oversee the return. She still had not done that until whatever this nonsense they did before, because she was being super, super careful because she didn't want to be overturned. Judges don't want to be overturned. And she wanted to make sure that she had a solid foundation for whatever decision she makes. So I think that's what you're seeing. You're seeing judges being cautious. So the chilling effect that the Trump administration wanted to have on judges by filing these emergency dockets and getting this a rogue Supreme Court, which I'm so disappointed in because I just didn't expect this at all. And I'm sorry for anyone who were following me. My name is JJ Legal. If you're new here, what I do is help people understand the lawsuits filed against the Trump administration. And early on, I was saying that the Amy Coney Barrett has gone against Trump before, and Chief Justice Roberts seems principled that I think they're going to join the liberal wing and win some of these cases. On substance, I still believe that Trump loses on substance. On all his executive orders, I think he loses one after the other on substance. But they're giving him these procedural wins, and I'm disappointed in them giving him the procedural wins. Anyway, I digress. Back to the point. So the point is that she said we're going to accelerate briefing schedule, and you're not going to get your relief today, but it's going to come soon. So there's an update. I started filming this video the day of the hearing, finished it the day after the hearing, but obviously after the 1 p.m. deadline that Judge Deborah Boardman gave to the Trump administration to answer her simple question, do you plan to start deporting babies? And then perhaps additionally, or deprive them of any other benefits of U.S. citizenship, such as a U.S. passport, a birth certificate, or the ability to apply for benefits that are only allowed under U.S. citizens. Now, rather than say simply, okay, we will stay temporarily for a short period of time until you make your decision under this expedited briefing schedule on whether or not to grant the preliminary injunction that the plaintiffs requested. Now, rather than just say that simply, they instead do the usual obfuscating bullshit that they did in Judge Boardman courtroom in the district court under the Alien Enemies Act case when he kept asking the Trump administration to give specific information as to the flight numbers, how many immigrants were on board. Little simple questions that you could see or you would know of because it's public information because they tweeted it out. They would not do that. They would just answer a bunch of nonsense bullshit. And the Kilma Abrego case, the judge Judge Zenas repeatedly asked the Trump administration to provide just basic details, just information, and they obfuscated and they gave a lot of different. They hem and hawed, and they did it. They do this in all the other cases. They're like the worst. Just like we're just not gonna participate. We're not gonna. They're just really bratty, annoying, but just like non-disrespectful administration ever. The other side of this, a Nuremberg trial, there are going to be answers to all of this. Nobody who's participating in this bullshit administration, all the nonsense they're doing in the courts, are going to look favorable. History is going to look bad on you guys. I don't understand why they think they just go in. They're in a cult. You just like say this cult of personality figure says he wants to do all this stuff and ignore stuff, and he has his sycophants who are unqualified and unfit, and they're just like puppets and just like, okay, we're going to do this. Pam Bondi doing all sorts of nonsense that Jeff Sessions and no attorney general before her would do the crap that she's doing. Like she wants to sue a bakery for what they decide to name their special dish. Like you don't got nothing else to do. There's a long list of things that here's a long list I'm put here of things that this Department of Justice handles. All these things they're focusing on just immigration. That's it. That's all. That's all she's doing. She's ignoring all the other things, all the other injustices going on in the United States that they're under their purview. She's not even doing none of that stuff. She just focused on just like deporting babies. Like you are soulless, and she wears a little cross. They're all just like heathens. Anyway, I digress. So the update is that they said I'll put it here. They essentially just said, well, we according to the court order, the court says that our order doesn't go into effect until 30 days after the court, and then the court gave a ramp up period saying that we have the authority to kind of prepare. So essentially, what you're saying is, yeah, you're preparing to start depriving babies. Like that's the answer. So you've just given Judge Boardman her reason why she's going to grant the preliminary injunction and block your asses. Thanks, goons. And I hope that holds your attention. And I hope you learned something. I hope you share what I've shared with you with other people. And follow this account. Let other people know. I'm JJ Legal on all platforms: TikTok, Threads, Instagram, YouTube here, of course, where you watch this on YouTube. Blue Sky. On Substack, I am JJ Legal, but my Substack name is Legality. I'll put links down to all my socials. You're interested in learning more. If you want to get this hat, you can go to TikTok. You can get this TikTok shop. I'll put a link down where you can get this hat, or TikTok shop, or wherever you can get this hat if you want this hat.